So that takes me back to, I like stories, so I'm going to tell you another story. Back when I was either 22, 23, somewhere in that area. And I was, at that time, I worked as a wilderness guide for the American Wilderness Foundation. And so I'd finished my normal summer of guiding, decided that I wanted to do something on my own. I got a hold of some friends and planned this whole trip out. And it was going to be up into the Northern Cascades, which is a pretty remote area. Some of you have heard this story, but I'm going to tell it again anyhow. So I had friends that were going to go. There was going to be 3 of us originally. They all backed out. And being basically stubborn as I am, I decided that I was going to go anyhow. Even though it's not a good idea to climb up into the mountains by yourself. Sometimes you don't always make the best decisions. Has anybody else experienced that? Yeah. Make a decision. Well, we know John did. Anyways, we make a decision, we do something, and we get partway through with it, and we realize this was kind of stupid. This is one of those where I got partway through and realized, yeah, I did not make a good decision. So I went ahead and went up to the Northern Cascades. Hiked up the trail first out of Beaver Pass, or Beaver Creek, which there's a trail that goes all the way up to what's called Beaver Pass. At Beaver Pass is where you leave the trail and you do what's called a high route. Well, high routes are not, if you're used to climbing lingo, you're familiar with what a high route is. What a high route is it's a route, it's not a trail. No signs, no markers, no trail. Sometimes you might see where other people have gone there if there's been enough. And so you'll have kind of a trail because it's been worn just simply by people going that same direction. And yeah, our deer trail. So got to Beaver Pass, and that was where I left the trail and went up basically the side of the mountain. Now, I'm also carrying, I plan to be out for about 10 to 14 days. And so my pack was heavy, it was about 80 pounds. And I was using the same pack that I used when I was guiding, which was a Kelce Tioga. It's a big pack, frame pack. You can carry anything and everything in it, because it's bomb-proof, basically. If you can lift it off the ground, the pack will be able to handle it. So I head up the side of the mountain. And this mountain, where I started at, I'm in the forest still. And lots of trees, big trees, in this, where I first started out. And then as you got up higher, the trees started getting thinned out because you're starting to get to the timberline. And you started to get heather that was growing on the ground, which heather can be slippery. Also, it's steep. It's steep enough where I have to use my hands. So feet are on the ground, I'm reaching outside, touching the side of the hill. So it's steep. Not vertical, but definitely steep. And I'm working my way up, and I am going from, I got to the point where the trees were getting, like I said, getting smaller because you're getting up to the timberline. So there's smaller trees now. So I'm grabbing hold of the trees and I'm to help pull branches of the trees, help pull myself up. I get part way up. I was probably about maybe 2/3 of the way up. And so the trees are getting a lot more sparse. It's more open now. And I look over and I see this log that's laying on the side of the hill. Log's about big, about that big around. It's got little stubby branches that have been broken off because it's an old log. And I thought to myself, I'll just work my way over to it, use it as a ladder. Sounded like a good idea at the time. I got over to the log, I got up on the log, and I've got to hold the branches, and starting up the tree. All of a sudden, this log starts sliding down the hill with me on top. Rolled off to the side real quick, grabbed another small tree to stop myself. And I'm sitting there holding on to this tree, watching this log disappear into the forest. And all I can hear is crashing and booming and banging as it's hitting all these different trees and as it heads on down. I've really realized at this point I made a bad decision. But I'm into it. I'm into the middle of this. Sometimes it's better once you commit to follow through than to try to back out. I probably could have backed out and come down at that point, but I didn't. Stubborn. So I continued to climb. Finally got up over the edge. I remember there was the last tree basically, one big tree that was right at the very top. So it's fairly flat on top, kind of a slope, a nice slope going up. But there was a definite edge. And I finally climbed over that edge, and I got up over that, and I just kind of went on the ground because I was tired. I'd climbed probably about 3,000 feet or so with this heavy pack on my back. Sat there and rested for a little bit, and then headed on up through the meadow area where it was relatively flat, up to the rocky peaks up above. My plan was to follow the ridge line up to where there was a lake. And that's where I was going to stay the night. I got up to the rocks, got on the ridge, started walking the ridge line, and this was a situation where on one side I'm looking down at least 3,000 feet on one side. The other side, probably about 3,000, maybe 500, but far enough where if you fail, it'd be over. I'm by myself. There's nobody else around. Kept going, got to one point where there was a rock cliff that I had to go up and over, and I started to climb up it. It was an easy climb, but not with an 80-pound pack on your back. Without it, it would have been a cinch. I'm starting to go up it, and at one point, there was kind of an overhang where I started to make this one move to go up around, and the bar on the top of my pack hit that rock, and it almost knocked me off. So I did get around it, and I got up on top, and I'm thinking, it's getting late, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I definitely should not be here. I'm looking to see if I can find a place where I can set up my tent and, spend the night. Well, I spotted a spot. There was some snow down below, a snowbank. So there was a stream flowing out of the snow across the meadow area, and there was a nice flat spot. And then, so it's kind of like this little plateau up there. And then you get to the other side of it, and it dropped off for thousands of feet down to the valley. So I made my way down to it, set up my tent. At this point, I'm, pretty shaken up from everything that I just experienced, and I decided that I wasn't even going to think about it, what I was going to do for the next day. And I just set up my tent, ate my dinner, went to sleep. The next morning I woke up and a storm had moved in. So winds blowing, basic whiteout conditions. I'm in the clouds. I can see no more than 10 foot. And I decide, okay, I'm not going anywhere. Not only that, but all the rocks that I had been over are now wet. So they're going to be slippery. I stayed there the whole day and just sat in my tent, stayed warm, stayed dry, and waited. The next morning I woke up. The storm was still there, but it had let up, and the cloud cover had raised. So the peaks that I had just gone over were still in the clouds, but the little plateau that I was on was just below the clouds. I crawled in the tent and I started looking around, and over to what had been the east of where I needed to go to get back to Beaver Pass, I could see, it wasn't a trail, but I could see like a route, maybe a goat path or goat trails, perhaps in the area, deer trails, but there was a definite, it was almost like God had taken a highlighter and went across the ground so that I could see exactly where I needed to go. I didn't even eat breakfast. I got up, packed my tent up, and just took off. Oh, one other thing too with that was interesting is while I was up there, before I actually, when I was packing up my tent, or packing up my camp, a helicopter came by. It came up the valley, so the valley was like U-shaped because it's all glacially made. And it came up the valley, it saw me and did one of these around, circled around me. Door was open, guy was standing in the door, he waves at me, I waved back, and then on up the valley they went. As it turned out, there was an airplane had gone down up in the mountains, not maybe a mile away from where I was at. I found this out after I came back. And it got caught in the storm and crashed in the mountains. And they were looking for the plane. And they didn't know for sure whether I was a part of that or not. And so that's why they did the circle around to make sure that I was okay and that, you know. So that was just kind of give you an idea of the area that I was in. So I packed up and I headed out and I followed this route that the Lord laid out ahead of me. I found this old camp that I didn't see it on the way up. I'd actually come up a little bit further over from where this camp was. So there was evidence of that people had been there before. And then as I started to work my way down, there was a stream bed that I ended up finding and followed the stream bed down. Now this was in September, so this is a seasonal stream. At this time of the year, it was dry. There was a lot of different small waterfalls that the stream flowed over, but I was able to get around those cliffs, basically, and follow that all the way back down to Beaver Pass. I had been there for, I think it was like 7 days. It had been 7 or 8 days that I'd been without seeing another person. I got to Beaver Pass and there was a shelter there, a 3-sided crude shelter. So I'm sitting in there, my clothes are wet, and I'm just relaxing for a little bit before I head on down the trail. And this guy come walking by. Man, I was so happy to see another human being. We started to talk, and he's like, okay, I'll see you later. And I'm thinking to myself, don't go. But the thing is God brought me out of the mountains. I trusted him. I prayed first. I trusted him, and he showed me the way out.